The energy debate has gone nuclear, with Labor having an absolute meltdown. We've got three-eyed fish all over the internet, personal insults all over the media, and more fallout than you can possibly imagine.
It's been a lot this week, I've got to say. James, Environment and Water Minister Tanya Plibersek this morning demanded the coalition publish costings for its nuclear plan, questioning how Australians could take it seriously with so little detail. Funny, weren't so worried about detail, of course, when it came to The Voice. Here was Tanya Plibersek.
He is saying to Australians, I don't trust you. I don't trust you with the costings we've done, if he's done the costings, or he's saying we've announced a policy without costing it. Like, when has an opposition ever gone to the Australian people with something as fundamental as saying we're going to slam the brakes on renewables, we're going to move to nuclear instead, and they've done it without a costing? I mean, seriously.
But when Resources Minister Madeleine King was asked how much Labor's green energy rollout would end up costing, well, she was all hot air and not the renewable kind.
Does the government have an all-up figure for its transition plan?
We know the transition is going to be challenging, and no one is stepping away from that fact. We have been put 10 years behind in this struggle, 10 years of denial of the effects of climate change and the need to move forward to renewables and to alternate sources of energy that are renewable and sustainable has been entirely ignored. So we're facing up to that. We are investing in it.
Meanwhile, Peter Dutton has described Anthony Albanese as a child in a man's body. I've got to say an insult to both children and men, but probably right in this context, while Nationals leader David Littleproud slammed the Prime Minister for Labor's puerile nuclear memes.
Our Prime Minister, he's a man with a mind still captured in his university years. He's a child in a man's body, and he should be a Prime Minister for our country instead.
And unfortunately, the Prime Minister had an opportunity to lead and to look at this and work through the issues that we're putting forward and saying, well, if there's an alternative, here's ours. But instead, he's used some churlish view to put out memes.
You know, James, the crazy three-eyed fish, the memes this week have been absolutely ridiculous. If they weren't so laughable, they would actually be quite offensive, because Labor is assuming that the average voter is a dud and that we're not able to do our own research, that they're not willing to do our own research into trying to figure out whether nuclear energy is good or not. But my favourite meme this week is this shocker from Labor frontbencher Andrew Leigh. Blinky the three-eyed koala. Now, the reason why I bring this up is, would you know it, that Andrew Leigh is actually described as one of the brightest minds in this country. And I did a bit of research on him. He has a PhD in public policy from Harvard. He was a professor in economics at ANU. He's a lawyer. He's an author. God help us if this is the kind of characters that are trundling out memes during what is a serious energy debate in this country. And apparently he's a bright mind.
Do you remember when Anthony Albanese won office and he promised, quote unquote, we will have a government run by adults? And Richard Marles, his deputy, was standing by his side and couldn't help but interject, there's now serious people in charge. And this is the sort of stuff we get. But it just shows that the Labor MPs prepared for the nuclear debate by watching reruns of The Simpsons.
Correct.
Because the three-eyed fish is an old Simpson joke.
Yeah.
I'll show you my favourite meme from the whole debate. It comes from the Australian Manufacturers Workers Union. You can see there they've got the photo of the nuclear power plant, but in the background, what the heck is that? It's a nuclear bomb has gone off. There's a mushroom cloud. And then they ask the question of Peter Dutton, who's going to insure your nuclear power plants? Well, I guess the same people who insure the facilities where our nuclear subs are going to be docked.
Absolutely.
But why is there a nuclear explosion, a bomb going off at the power plant? It doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And this is a proven technology. Obviously, it is used by 32 different countries around the world, including in France, of course, where our athletes are going to be going next month for the Paris Olympics. So what are we saying? They're going to come back with, you know, ears on their kneecaps and other parts of the world. I mean, the arguments here are just wrong.
Well, every time you know, they criticise the coalition and say, you're going to pull out of the Paris Agreement, the immediate retort should be, you mean Paris where they have nuclear power plants?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Now, just before we went to air, James, I saw that there was a Resolve poll that's just dropped in 9 newspapers. Haven't had a chance to go through it properly, but the main key thing here was that Australians are split on nuclear power. 41% of voters are backing the shift to atomic energy, 37% are rejecting the idea. It does, though, say that 73% are still in favour of renewable energy. But I think what the key point it's making here is that it asks voters on a broader test if they would be persuaded to actually back nuclear, and the survey found that 30% say they do not have a strong view and are open to investigating that option. So it does suggest that people are willing to have this argument. But when the images of the three-eyed fish are being thrust into people's face, it's nothing more than a scare campaign. Yeah. People are allowed to do their own research to realise that it's worked so well, and our plan, a risky experiment, this race to renewables, which has never been done, as we know, in any other parts of the world, is being put back to front while we are closing down these coal-fired power stations.
I would have thought that poll is quite encouraging for people, because there's 32% who support nuclear. There's 30 who don't have a view either way, so they could be persuaded.
Absolutely.
Put that together, you've got a good majority of 60-odd%.
Yeah.
And as for the 73% who support renewables, well, I support renewables. I'm not against solar power or wind power. It depends on the question that's asked. If you ask me, do you support renewables? I'd say, yeah, but that's a different question to you. Do you support renewables as our sole source of energy, as opposed to any other sort of base load power? So it depends on the question as to how valid that is.
I mean, the coalition has been very clear that it's not just going to be a sole nuclear energy. It's going to be a mix of gas as well as renewables to try and achieve those targets. So it is a mix. But the key point here is, James, is that we're not going to be able to achieve targets. But it's been said, though, by the Australian Energy Market Operator that Labor cannot achieve those targets because the infrastructure rollout is not there right now. So, the coalition's putting it on the table with a mix of energy sources.
But it'll be interesting to see how this debate goes. So we've had the ridiculous for the last week with three-eyed fish.
Ridiculous.
And, the Victorian Premier actually posted a photograph or an image of an 18-eyed dog. So that's apparently what nuclear power will do. But it'll be interesting to see if the debate goes from the ridiculous to the nasty, because former Prime Minister Paul Keating has come out today and called Peter Dutton wicked and cynical. He said only the most wicked and cynical individual would foist nuclear power on the nation. So it's starting to get a little bit hot, this debate.
Yeah, but it's getting ridiculous. It needs to be an open and honest debate.